Today we are going to discuss a very beautiful poem. The name of the poem is The Fish, and it's written by the American poetess Elizabeth Bishop. Now, I don't think you need an introduction to what a fish is. To a person living in Kerala, the fish is something very familiar, and most of us eat it, and we use it on a regular basis. Though the fish is very familiar to us, the activity of fishing may not be very familiar, because we have a lot of people who go to the sea and the lakes and the rivers and who catch fish, and we just buy it from them. But from what we read and understand about the life in America, fishing for them seems to be a passion. We hear of families going on weekend fishing trips, and we read about men cherishing the memories of the fishing trips they used to go on with their fathers. And we again read about children being given fishing rods as birthday presents. So fishing is kind of a part of their life. And Elizabeth Bishop, who was brought up in Nova Scotia in America, was again very familiar with the art of fishing, and from what we read about her, we understand that she was an expert in the art. Here she writes about one particular fishing trip and one particular fish that she happened to catch during that trip. It was a huge fish, and to put it in her own words, it was a tremendous fish, maybe one of the biggest she had caught. And she was trying to pull the fish and haul it into the boat when she happens to take a closer look at the creature. Out of sheer curiosity, she looks closer at the fish and learns that it is a pretty old fish. The skin was torn in places. The brown skin was hanging like strips of wallpaper. There was barnacles, tiny sea creatures, water creatures sticking onto the skin of this fish. It was infested with white sea lice. So all this tells us that it's a pretty ancient fish. And when she looks closer, she sees the gills. The fish was gasping for breath, and she says it was breathing in the terrible oxygen. And why would oxygen be terrible? Now we can look at it in two ways. It was terrible because at that point, at that juncture in the fish's life, the fish was terribly important, because if it did not get enough oxygen, it would die. And at the same time, the oxygen was again terrible, because too much of oxygen could kill it too. So that is why maybe the poet has said that the oxygen is terrible. And again she talks about the frightening gills of the fish. And how do we explain this term, frightening gills? Now, frightening because there was blood oozing out of the gills, the fresh red blood. Maybe that was what made the whole thing look very frightening. And again, it might be that since it was a huge fish, the gills were really sharp and incisive, so it looked as though it could cut through your flesh, and maybe that is why it was frightening. And then she looks at the fish and she imagines the white flesh, the bones, the fins and everything, the innards of the fish, the gills, all tightly packed inside the fish. Then she looks at the eyes of the fish, and she sees that it's yellow. It's almost got a very hazy look, as though it has given up fight, as though it doesn't have any more spirit in it to fight out this time. So it's just lying there, hanging like dead weight, not moving, not trying to move away from or fight free of the hook that has caught in his mouth. And when he's got a very sullen look too, a very unhappy look. Now we know that fish don't look very happy anyway, but she just attributes a sullen look to the fish. And when she looks closer, she sees something very strange. She sees on the lower lip of this fish, that there are 5 cords remaining from fishing rods hanging onto the lip. So that means that there were 5 hooks lodged in the fish's mouth, and now only a few cords remain, and 5 of different colors. And suddenly this particular scene, it alters the entire attitude of the poet towards this helpless creature, because to her suddenly she feels that each of these remains of the fishing cords attached to the mouth of this fish is almost like a medal for the bravery of the fish, because it is not a simple feat, it's not at all a simple achievement for a fish to have escaped from the hook 5 times. That is an achievement, isn't it? And so she feels a lot of admiration for this poor creature, and suddenly the entire attitude changes, and she doesn't want to take the fish out of the water. She doesn't want to take it home anymore, because what she sees in that fish now is not just a small water animal, but what she sees is a hero. And the message that the poem gives to us is that heroism and greatness is not something that is special only for human beings. Now, we have a bloated and inflated picture of ourselves. We, in the sense, we human beings, we tend to think that we alone are important, that we alone can achieve greatness. But here is an instance of a tiny creature, not tiny in the sense, of course, it's a big fish, but compared to human beings and compared to many other creatures, the fish, of course, is small. And the poet is trying to tell us is that we should learn to respect the other creatures around us, be it a fish, or be it an insect, or be it a tree or a plant. We know the large-scale destruction that we human beings are causing to nature, and this particular poem gives us the message that we should learn to respect the things around us, even though it be a fish. And she talks about, with this realization, she talks about rainbow colors filling the entire boat. And the boat, she says, is filled with a rainbow color. And what she means here is this rainbow colors might be the feeling of admiration she feels for the fish, the feeling of compassion that encompasses her heart and it overflows, the feeling of respect for the fish and for nature. So though a very simple poem, it gives us a very subtle and a very important message that we should learn to respect nature, that we should learn to value things around us, however little they may be. So that is the beautiful message that this very simple poem gives us. So let us imbibe the message, let us imbibe the true spirit that the poet wants to convey to us, and let's learn to live and let live.